Welcome to Series 2 of the GM Moving podcast, where we share with you stories of how people and partners across Greater Manchester are creating the conditions for active lives for all. I'm Eve, Strategic Director at Greater Sport, leading, supporting and connecting GM Moving, Greater Manchester's movement for movement. Supported by investment from Sport England, Greater Manchester partners have been taking a whole system, place-based approach to embed physical activity into everything, to enable sustained behaviour change for happier, healthier, more connected communities and active lives for all. In each episode, we share stories of what this looks like in action in each of the 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester. Today, I'm back in Manchester Central Library, this time with Helen, a local pilot lead in Glossop, and I'm rejoined by Nicole, one of my colleagues at Greater Sport, who supports the local pilot network. Glossop's local pilot is working with people in Whitfield and has a particular focus on young people and families, people out of work or at risk of becoming workless, and people aged 40 to 60 with long-term health conditions. So, let's hear from Helen and Nicole to find out how they've been supporting people to move more in Glossop and to have fun in the process. I start off by asking Helen to share a bit of her own personal story and why moving matters to her.
As a child, I was turned off sport completely by PE teachers, being small, being a little bit overweight, last to be picked for teams, all that sort of thing. So really came out of school hating anything to do with sport. Parents desperately trying to get me into sport and activity because I was gaining weight when I went through puberty and stuff. Still stayed small, which was always a conflict. Wanted to eat with competitively against my brother, who's 6'4" and I'm 5'2", so you can imagine he's going up and I'm going out. But when I got to university, I changed. I realised that actually if I want to carry on eating and drinking, I can't continue on in the way I was doing. So I was already with my partner at that point, and we were out on a drinking session with some friends, and we were discussing all this sort of thing, and that we'd found out that the local martial artist had started doing a ladies' defence course. So we had a bet with the guys that we would go and do 3 weeks of kickboxing training at this martial arts centre. And if we did, they'd streak around the streets. So 10 years later on, I've got my black belt and they've still not streaked.
Wow, what an amazing story.
But yeah, so that sort of kicked me off onto my journey of realising that sport doesn't have to be team sport, and the well-being that I got from... I had a job down in Nottingham, so I'm still living in Glossop, working in Nottingham, quite a stressful role, spend a lot of time on the roads and cars, getting frustrated on the M1 and all that sort of stuff. Be ringing husband up at on junction 28 at 10 o'clock at night going, I've only moved 500 yards in 2 hours, you know. But I'd go straight to the gym, and by the time I'd done that, I was back in the room, back in the space and back in the place that I need to be. So my love of activity has just grown and grown and grown, and realising my mental health really was helped by that, as well as my physical being. I've been able to eat far more than I used to be able to eat, and I do enjoy my food.
You do a lot for the local community, and you're quite well known as well, so you've got quite a lot of women into running, haven't you, with your running groups, and being very modest with your physical activity. You're running all the time.
Yes, I run every day. So I started some school gate runs 7 years ago when my children were at school. We've had ladies get to marathon distance, but most of them, they like to get up to about 10k and then settle there and regularly run 10ks. And it's all about the social side of it as well. We're out tomorrow, we're going for a walk, we're going to go over the Nab and up Coombe Rocks, and we'll sit on the top, weather provided, and have a glass of fizz before we walk on. So running came from, I realised when I was doing my brown belt that I was not fit enough for my black belt, so I started running as a a way of increasing my stamina. And then when I had the children, the kickboxing training didn't fit in with my lifestyle of having a young child, whereas you can go outside and you can run whenever you like. So it fitted with the family. And to be honest, it's become my main form of exercise now, and I just love being outdoors, and I love the fact that we live in Glossop. We're fortunate. Everybody, I think, lives within half a mile of open countryside. So off I go in the morning, first thing at morning, and it gets me energised and ready for work. I quite often turn up on Zoom calls looking a bit like having purple hair. I sometimes have purple streaks running down my face. I'm thinking, I hope they can't see that on camera.
So we've gone from hating, really, sport, physical activity, that really being stripped out of your life for your experience at school, through to being someone that now is a black belt, which I wasn't warned about before you walked into the room.
Because I didn't know. If I'd known that, I mean, I'd been a lot nicer to you, Helen. Let's put it that way.
So again, that humility, you don't actually share all these things. And then, daily running now and encouraging others. Fantastic. I guess for anyone listening who's going, Glossop, and they're still wrestling in their head going, Glossop, Greater Manchester? Is Glossop part of Greater Manchester? Could you just explain?
Yeah, so Glossop is part of Glossop and Tameside Hospital, so the NHS Trust. So this, because of this whole project is more about preventative healthcare, obviously it's to do with the hospital, so that's why we're linked up. But Glossop's so close to Tameside anyway. We're children, I was saying earlier that the son was on his way to college in Tameside. Yeah, a large percentage of the population of Glossop work within the Greater Manchester area. They're more likely to work in Greater Manchester than they are in Derbyshire. So our links are really strong with Greater Manchester, and it is, from my point of view, unfortunate we're not part of Greater Manchester. I wouldn't have some of the problems I have in the work.
Can make it a bit tricky sometimes, can't it, when these structures are different. But yeah, I want people to understand if they're sat there looking at a map going, wait a minute,
we've added another borough.
Sneakily just sort of thought we'd invite you in. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your role now in Glossop. What does that look like? What do you do?
I carry on trying to inspire people to move, and it might not necessarily be running, because obviously that's quite high-end intensity, but I encourage people to walk around the parks. So we have things like story walks going on in the parks where you can scan a QR code, and it's a lovely narrator, actress from Glossop has narrated the stories, so she'll talk you around the park. So they're quite low level, and you can stop and sit down and explore different parts of the park that you wouldn't normally view. You know, most people with toddlers, they'll go to the play area and that's as far as they get. They don't actually realise that, like Manor Park's huge park with fantastic facilities. Mm-hmm. So we start off at that sort of low level, and then within the walking sort of side of things, we've got a group that's working around the Effels at the moment, if you know what they are.
So what are they?
The peaks over 900 foot in the Peak District. There's 95 of them in the Peak District. So you can mark them off basically. You can get an app called the Eiffel app, and you can mark off as you go when you've done them. So yes, we've got a walking group that are doing that, which obviously is quite high level walking. But we've got social groups, we've got ladies only groups, we've got men only groups. The lady ones are more for people that probably struggling with social isolation and that sort of thing. So working with the social prescribers, they refer the ladies into the ladies walking group. Work with the local leisure centre. So at the moment, it sounds like I'm doing everything for women, doesn't it? But at the moment, we're working with the local leisure centre on menopause. We started off with a Facebook page called Chat Through the Change, and we invited lots of, because I'm 50, so I was inviting all my friends, but also their friends, and it grew into quite a network of people, and there's 800 people on that group now. We had some evening Zoom calls where they could do some question and answers with experts. So we had a GP on there talking about HRT, we had a sleep expert come on, we had an exercise therapist come on, somebody about sex and relationships, all them sort of things that affect women going through menopause. And then from that, it led on to actually, we need to do stuff face to face, and we need to do more than just give them the theory, let's give them the actual practical side of things. So we've linked up with Lex Leisure and a lady called Becky, who's been trained in menopause as a PT, and she's now on her 3rd programme of sessions for women in menopause. So fitness through menopause, I think they're called, and it's an 8-week programme, but at the end of it then they can continue on to do more exercises. It's all resistance training and that sort of thing to safeguard your future. We've been doing lots of youth groups, so we started off, so my work's was trying to focus place-based, so looking at the 3 different areas of Glossop, so Whitfield, Gamesley and Hadfield, and we were doing summer activities in them 3 places, and during them activities the parents come and talk to me, and they was basically saying antisocial behaviours on the rise, but the reason it's on the rise is because there's nothing for the kids to do. So they know the answer, they know that the kids need occupying, and they know there's a reason why the antisocial behaviour's there. It's not just a case of kids being badly behaved, but there's nowhere, nobody really willing to stick the necks out and sort of do it. In Gamesley, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of really brilliant women that volunteers, proper community champions that were like, we want to do this. So I said, well, if you want to do it, then I'm here to support that. So we did. It took a while, but we're now 6 months in, and we've got 2 sessions going a week. We have a Wednesday, which is the age 11 to 17, and a Monday, which is 7 to 11-year-olds. And we have over 100 children coming through the doors each week. See it as a safe place to come. They can be active if they want to be active in various ways. We always have somebody there that will do a sporting activity with them. They go outside and they have the mugger next door, so they have a kickabout on there as well. But they can just come and chill out if they want and be with their mates. And it's a safe space, and they're not getting moved on by people. They're not getting shouted at for making too much noise. So, and we're sort of that, because that model's seems to be really successful in Gamesley. We've just 3 weeks ago started one in Whitfield as well, so that's been really positive. The age group, we've only got 1 time slot there, unfortunately, so we've had to merge the 2 age groups, so that's going to be interesting how the dynamics work in that one, because 7-year-olds to 15, 16-year-olds.
Quite a big jump.
A mixed bag, yeah. Although they do keep themselves separate, there's plenty of space, there's plenty of different rooms for them to go in, so it's not like you're cramming them in and saying get on with each other.
Sounds brilliant, Helen. I've got a real picture now of all these different places and people just being active in different ways and having a lot of fun in the process, really, which kind of definitely shines out. So can you talk about what is it about being part of sort of the local pilot? How has that made any difference in terms of ways of working and what you're doing?
It has made a massive difference, to be honest. So High Peak Borough Council have adopted quite a lot of the Greater Manchester way of thinking. We have the High Peak Borough Council are just about to launch their Move More strategy. So it shows that the way of thinking has gone across. Active Derbyshire talking in the same manner as well. So,
and if you were to try and bottle that, people go, yeah, learning about what? What is it? What's the essence of this? How's it different? How would you describe it to somebody?
It's that collaboration, isn't it? That everybody's a leader. When you're around the table, in the past, one person spoke and everybody else listened, whereas it's taken a while. We've been doing this for how long now? 2.5 years. I think Glossop's been sort of proactive in it, and it probably took the first 12 months really for us to get our heads around that. That who's leading this meeting, and it's like nobody's leading the meeting. We've all got an equal say and equal value around the table, whether you're a community member or you're a strategic lead, or you're a cabinet member or whoever you are within the partners. And it is making a difference now because you are seeing the different ideas coming through and they're listening to the real life stories at the bottom, which they wouldn't have seen before, how that actually changes in strategy does trickle down to the man on the street, and it's feeding it back up then as well.
And you can see that in the kind of commitment from, so you've got Scott new in post, so he's what's his role? So he's Move More Children Young People officer. And that's been funded in collaboration with
Active Derbyshire Council, Public Health, High Peak Borough Council and High Peak School Sports Partnership. So that's a real collaboration to bring one person into post.
And you've demonstrated that kind of way of working is viable and is successful in terms of that, speaking to the local community and really taking that learning on board, seeing the way that you work, and have kind of extrapolated that out to Scott, who's going to be working, you know, on that children, young people remit now. Yeah. It's really, that's really impressive.
So you've shared some of the joys. I've got stuff from menopause through to young people, through to all parts of the community being supported to be active and support each other to be active, and creating safe spaces for that to happen. Any other particular kind of highs or joys that you want to point to before we move on to the challenges?
The previous thing that I'd witnessed is at the start, so I've been involved right from the start in Glossop, and you know, a big issue was that you had people who didn't understand the complexities of living in Glossop and kind of what that means with, you know, when you've got High Peak Borough Council and then Derbyshire County Council, and also you've got CCG from, you know, Tayside and that kind of thing, and all the different complexities around that. You had people who perhaps were living in Derby or, you know, other places in Derbyshire making decisions about Glossop, and they didn't understand how, you know, that it's a very unique place. So I think, you know, your work has been able to give a voice to residents, and also the different kind of, you know, assets and champions and it within Glossop. And a really good example of that is what's happened at Bankswood with the pump track there that's, you know, recently been installed, and it's brought the kind of collaborative approach of the Move More Glossop steering group and the different agencies that are involved has allowed that additional investment in, but you've had your own spin on it, and you've been able to influence the way that British Cycling kind of went about that. And it's really important, because previously, you know, you might have had it dumped anywhere and it might not have been used because it's not what the community wanted or where it was needed. And through the kind of insight gathering that you did and things like that, you know, you've really been able to influence that. So I'd say that's, you know, a real win for the work in Glossop.
It's allowed people's ideas what would have been ideas that would never have left the ground to actually blossom and go, do you know what, there's somebody there who will support me and we can do this. The evolution of the Hangout Club, which is the youth club on Damesley, they've now got a bingo club from the volunteers that met at the Hangout Club, and some of the volunteers also have gone on to do the life skills sessions at the Bureau, and are on the Back to Work programme as well. So when you start off on a project that you think is targeted at that level of community or age group or cohort people, but then actually it spirals out, and you get these wins that you were actually, do you know, I didn't think that would happen. It didn't even occur to me that would happen, but it has happened, and it's an added bonus on.
So one thing's become a catalyst for another, and these ripples keep spreading. It is fascinating to think of what it looks like to take a place-based approach within a place that has so many complex overlapping structures, as Nicole
complex putting it
politely. Yeah. I mean, there must be, we talk a lot about having to shift governance and processes and make sure that some of those structures, be they around, you know, geographical borders or around formal structures and systems, you know, how often they can get in the way. I mean, people must look at Glossop and go, oh my goodness, we thought we had it tough. But so how have you managed to navigate that? Is this has there been any key learning, I suppose, in taking this kind of place-based approach, and as Nicole says, giving a voice to kind of local people who live there, as opposed to feeling as though it's things that are imposed, that you've learned through the last couple of years?
I think one of the keys is relationship building and persistence. I don't go away. I don't go away very easily. Relationships, though, are definitely the key. And getting the people that you're speaking to try and understand what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve that. Also understanding that their capacity and their limitations within their own job as well, because it's all right to keep pecking one person, but if they actually have got massive workload and they're not quite the right person to be able to shift what you want them to shift, then obviously you're both going to end up getting frustrated, aren't you? So it is complex. It's very complex in Glossop, but having those key people with key relationships is definitely the way to make it happen. And because of this collaboration of when we go into meetings now, we do try and be much more everybody's a leader, that there's voices coming from places that wouldn't have normally spoken, and actually then those that can make it happen realise, well, actually it is needed. It's not just me shouting about that. There's all these people behind me ready to support me, and we've got the evidence of need as well from below. So, and that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's okay going with an idea, but if you haven't got the evidence of need within the system, then it's not going to happen either, is it? I can't say I've got an answer for Glossop, because I don't think we'll ever get a true pathway across the complex.
No, but I think something there's definitely something around trust, and I've seen over the last few years those different partnerships, between DCC, High Peak Borough Council, Active Derbyshire, the Bureau. I've seen in that space the way it's evolved, and particularly during COVID and kind of recovery from that. I think there's a definite understanding that we are all on the same page, and we're trying to make things better for the people of Glossop, and it completely makes sense to work together and share that resource. And
so you mentioned the Bureau. Can you tell listeners what is the Bureau?
The Bureau is the local volunteer charity. They're known as the Volunteer Bureau. So they host my role. They work across the High Peak with the other CVS teams as well. So there's quite a network of volunteers.
What's been really good as well, and something that you've kind of brought and Kaz has brought as well, is a flexibility in approach. I think the way that you kind of approach, like the work that you've done with some schools and things like that, is you're willing to work around them. You're not coming in and saying this is what you've got to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
You also referred to Kaz. Who's Kaz?
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, she'll be fuming. She doesn't get a good shout out now. So she'll be listening to this. She'll be like, right, I've not mentioned me yet.
Kaz Little. She's she now works for High Peak Borough Council, Parks and Leisure and Community Engagement Team for Glossop and Hope Valley. It's been 6 months she's been with us now. She's made quite an impact. Speeded the work up. Areas where where I couldn't get into High Peak Borough Council to a certain person because she's actually within the system. She can knock on the right doors and say, listen to Helen.
I just wondered then, you talked about some of the challenges for particular age groups, for example, that still exist. Do you have a sense of how many people that live in Glossop actually do access those green spaces?
Pre-COVID, probably very few, to be perfectly honest. The first lockdown where the government was going, go out and do your hour a day exercise, and you're quite welcome to do that. We saw a massive spike in walking, to the point where trails that I would have run along and not seen anybody, for miles, suddenly it was more like the M1. Passing families with dogs and generations of people as well. But then it went down again once the lockdowns disappeared. But we do have these 3 very deprived areas in Glossop, and then the people who live in them areas, no, they don't access the green spaces, despite the fact that it's a stone throw away. You speak to them about it, they'll go, you know what, I've never even thought about doing it. There's the unknown of the fear of getting lost. There's the level of fitness that they probably couldn't even walk the half mile to actually get into the green space. Lack of equipment. More the fear really of, I've never done it and I don't know what to expect. It's a funny one, because if you've never been out for a walk for enjoyment, because their walk is, I've got to walk to the shops because they don't drive, so they still move around within their space, but they don't go outside of that space because a lot of them don't drive. Public transport's really poor. It's like Gamesley's on the top of a hill. So if you walk, you can walk down the hill, but you're not going to walk back with your shopping. So you're then going to get in a taxi or whatever because the buses are terrible. But what they see walking is a means of getting from A to B. It's not a leisure thing. And as mentioned before, from the hangout club, some of the volunteers, they've got a bingo club going, but they've also got a walk and talk group going as well, where they meet up outside the local chippy. Not the best place.
It's a great chippy though.
It's one of the best chippies in Glossop, yes.
Shout out to the chippy.
It's called the chippy. Let's give them an advert. But they meet outside the chippy and they go for a walk, and they're slowly growing that walk. So there is slight changes in their habits, and it is taking just one or two people within that community to say, why don't you come for a walk and we'll have a chat, and I want to lose a bit of weight, do you want to come with me? Because they've not got access to gyms, because like I say, by the time they've got to the gym, they've done their exercise, so because there isn't any gyms up there. I've been working with the local leisure centre to try, and they're looking at doing more place-based work in the areas as well. So that one of the barriers we do have is that Derbyshire County Council own the community centres within Glossop, and they have a tendency not to really like people going in buildings very often. We had massive problems over COVID, obviously with COVID restrictions, but even when COVID restrictions were being reduced everywhere else, they were still keeping them very tight on the community centres. Now they'll open back up with no COVID restrictions. There's still issues around capacity for caretakers and that sort of thing. So community groups have a tendency to struggle to find indoor spaces. So that is one of the problems that comes with this tiered system within the council. Because with High Peak Borough Council, any of their land or buildings we have no problems getting into. And that's because they're closer to Glossop and understand the dynamics. There's no other buildings to go into, that's the problem. There's the odd church hall here and there, but then you've got other restrictions that occur. You can't go and do basketball in a church hall because they don't want you knocking over the pews and stuff, or the chairs and things. So there's them sort of issues that we're still battling with. There's some sticking points that are frustrating when it comes to that side of things, and it affects the community, that, because if you're a volunteer and you've got to battle to get into the building, you're spending enough time volunteering for your group. That's just an extra layer, isn't it, that you've got to do, and it's risk assessments and everything that they're expecting. So
energy gets drained.
Yes, it does.
So, have you seen that this sort of the way of working in terms of a place-based approach to physical activity and what you're doing, all the things you're talking about, has that had an impact on wider work within the local area?
Yeah, it's getting replicated in other areas now. So we've got, like in New Mills, another town of Glossop, the leisure centre there is very much looking at how they can be more place-based and go to the people rather than expecting the people to come to them. Same in Fairfield, in Buxton as well. So yeah, the learning is going out. You can't expect people to come to you. There's so many barriers. People that live in these deprived areas, their lives are so complex to start off with. If you then put, well, you've got to get a mile to the local leisure centre to do your fitness, whatever, even if it's a doctor's referral, so it's free when you get there, you've still got to get there. So we are, like with the doctor's referral, we're currently in the process of moving them out of the leisure centres and actually taking them to the place-based places, because that's where the referrals are coming from. They're coming from these deprived areas where people have got long-term health conditions through lifestyle more than anything. So it's about, obviously, the education as well and that side of things. So yeah, the learning has gone across the High Peak, so yeah, it's really good.
So, what's next, and what does the future look like?
What's next? Well, transport is one of my key focuses, actually.
You're going to solve it?
I wish I could. I need to flatten Glossop. That would help.
I've heard you can move mountains. I didn't know you could flatten them, Helen.
Yeah, active travel is one of my pet things about in Glossop, really, because having children at high school age, obviously they're in that in between where they don't want mum taking them here, there and everywhere, and I don't like getting in the car anyway, so they've always had to walk with mum. But to get to the high school's in Hadfield, it's a fair old walk. So we're looking at how we can get them to cycle to school, but the A57 that runs through the centre of Glossop, such a trunk road, heavy goods vehicles, you know, I don't like cycling on it, never mind sending my children on it. I find alternative routes. Yeah. So we have identified an off-road route that's currently a footpath by linking a few footpaths together, and we have the national cycle route does go through, skirts the edge of Glossop, and using a bit of that and some bridleway and stuff. We have identified routes which Sustrans have had a look at, and they think it's the most feasible route as well. So yeah, that is the project really. Obviously that requires quite a lot of infrastructure, which brings a lot of cost involved. So at the moment we're sort of looking at the soft measures that we can do, so encouraging people to use bikes where they can anyway, which is like the pump track, getting the schools involved in all the different walk to school days, clean air days, cycle to school week, all them sort of different things, trying to change the habits of the people, so that we can improve the need, and then we can look at how we can finance this off-road route. That's going to be the slow burn because it's a long-term thing, isn't it? But I'm optimistic because I'm that sort of person.
Sounds like a great vision, and it might be a slow burner, but it sounds like a better option than flattening mountains, I have to say.
I don't think I can flatten mountains or remove rivers. That's the hard bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure how popular it'd be to start knocking people's houses down, really.
But that sounds brilliant. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and listen and talk, and I want to come now and come and see all this stuff in action. Thank you, Helen, for everything you're doing. Yeah, you really are. Yeah, a massive inspiration. So keep running.
Oh, will do. It keeps me sane.
And take care.
Thanks.
Thanks
both.
Thanks for listening to this GM Moving podcast episode. We've heard how moving matters to everybody and how we can all play a role to design moving back into everyday life. We'd love to hear how you keep moving and the ways you're supporting others to live an active life. You can contact us on our socials. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Greater Sport and don't forget the hashtag GM Moving in Action. Please do share this episode with people and organisations who'll find it useful. And join the movement. A big thank you to everyone who's investing in this work and playing their parts to test, to learn and to make this happen. This series is a Mike Media production.